You know, school systems are important, but they do not supersede the rights of parents to raise their own children. You know, I did this debate in the governor's race, and we did it in this auditorium. And there was like 100 some people, 200 people, and basically my opponent wheeled in people from Broward Teachers Union, okay? They all had the same shirt on, whatever. And so what was said was, okay, you guys are here, but it's not about the crowd. Don't interrupt, don't hoot and holler, don't do any of that or whatever. So what do? They scream the whole time. Anytime I would talk, they try to drown me out and all this stuff and whatever. I mean, I can handle it. I just did whatever. But I'm just thinking to myself, these are people that are in our school system, and that's the way they're conducting themselves. I know we just got through this election cycle, but the school board races in 2024, I think gives us an opportunity to flip some more of these boards throughout the state of Florida. And I know that there's definitely like individual school board members who've been very obnoxious over these last few years with how they handled COVID, masking, all these different things. And here's the thing, okay, they're free to do that, but they are doing that representing constituencies who agree with us on all those issues, not agree with them on those issues. So we need to make sure we have good candidates ready to go, and we'll continue to make education a priority, make parents' rights a priority, and make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure we have school systems that are focused on education in the classical sense, not jamming down an ideological agenda down our kids' throats. Thank you all. God bless.
Please welcome Dave Rubin.
Thank you very much. How's everybody feeling? All right, we are later in the afternoon, so we're going to need some energy, people. First off, make some noise for the governor who is here. The guy is busy. He is a busy man, but he showed up. Obviously, education is one of the important issues to the governor, and you know, I say it on my show all the time, but isn't it easy to listen to someone when they're telling the truth? Right? When they're just telling the truth, saying what he did, why he did it, and what the results are. It's so simple. And if you noticed, although he had a couple notes on the podium here, he basically was looking at you guys the entire time, 45 minutes, looking straight at you, which is in stark contrast to the President of the United States, who needs a teleprompter to tell you what his wife's name is. So that's the difference between Florida and what's going on in the federal government. I am thrilled to be here, and we're going to talk a bit about education, and we're going to talk about the media. That's really what they want me to focus on today, which I suppose has somehow become my specialty. But before we start, I am very excited to tell you guys that 1 year ago yesterday, I became a Floridian. 1 year. That's right, I lived in Cali, communist California. I lived there. Any other expats, any other California refugees? Oh, wow. Wow, quite a bit, quite a few of you guys. Well, welcome to Florida too. And I have to say, since I've been here, you know, people don't realize the beauty of the American system as it was set up to be, this idea of federalism, and that when you live in different states, the states are constantly going through an experiment, right? They're constantly tinkering, and one state can say high taxes, one state can say low taxes, one state can have this policy related to education, another state can have this, and then people can figure out where to go. And I am telling you guys, 1 year into this Florida Freedom Operation, I live in a different country, and I just want to thank all of you OGs who have been here. Truly, you guys did it right. You know, there was this meme of Florida man, right? Like, Florida man, he's out on the highway and he's wrestling an alligator and he's got a cigar and all this stuff, but it's like Florida man did it a hell of a lot better than everybody else. So, yeah. So I am thrilled to be here and be in Florida and be with you guys and to talk about the media, right? Because the media is a big component of what we're all fighting, right? I know you guys are at the ground level fighting for your children and your grandchildren and your communities and all of those things. I liked what the governor did at the end of his speech there, where basically he just had you guys yelling out cities for applause. That was pretty good. That was pretty solid. I might end on that as well. Who knows a city in Florida? You, okay. You get a car. In Florida, we could give out cars because we have a budget surplus here. Do you know that? We do. We have a massive budget surplus because we're basically doing everything right. But the media would not have you believe that, right? If you watch the mainstream media, whenever they talk about Florida, and I'm talking about NBC, I'm talking about CNN, I'm talking about the New York Times and the Washington Post and the rest of them, what is the idea of Florida? The general idea of Florida is somehow that we are a very scary, close-minded, right-wing state full of mean old people. That is pretty much what they will tell you about Florida, and it's the reverse. It's completely the reverse, right? I can tell you in the years since I've been here, people smile here, they're happy here, things are working here, people have jobs. There's no homeless people. I don't know what we did with them, but, well, actually, I do know. We shipped them to Martha's Vineyard, and they weren't even ours. Like, things are working here, you know what I'm saying? Then they got jobs in Martha's Vineyard. No, they kicked them off within 24 hours. It was incredible. But that's the idea of Florida, if you listen to the mainstream media, that somehow we're doing everything wrong, and the fine gentleman that spoke here just 45 minutes or so ago, the governor, that he somehow is this mean authoritarian and he's fighting this culture war, right? And I've heard the governor talk about this, and I've discussed it with him in events that we've done together. You know, he didn't go in when he became governor a couple of years ago to fight some of these fights. The fights actually came to him, and when they say, well, he's fighting, what they mean is he's fighting back, right? And I think that's the position that many of you find yourselves in, because if I was to poll you guys right now, I'm pretty sure that most of you would not have thought you would be at a conference like this, or you'd be running to be on a school board, or even think that any of the issues that we are constantly talking about these days, whether it's the gender and sexuality stuff in school, or the neo-racism that's brought in through critical race theory, or any of these things, none of us would have thought that this was done, right? I'm a Gen Xer. Do we have some Gen X people in here? We got some Gen Xers in here. We're like the forgotten generation, right? They skipped us. It was the boomers, and now everyone focuses on the kids. But I'm 46 years old, and I can tell you, I grew up in a time when we had solved most of these issues. We really had. America really did it better than any country in the history of the world. There are nations that are far older than us that kept slavery way longer. There are all sorts of problems all across the world. America went through and systematically, they love the term systematically, and they love systemic things, but we systemically went through and found places where freedom didn't exist and equality didn't exist, and we always did the right thing. And as a Gen Xer, it was done. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Nobody was racist. Nobody was sexist. Nobody believed that any of this was okay. And then look what happened. And this is where I would say, and I say this on the show, we all should look in the mirror. We sort of got fat on the freedom, right? We kind of got fat on the freedom. So we just thought, oh, education will always kind of work. They'll always kind of teach the kids an honest assessment of our history and teach things that were real and fact-based and all of those things. They won't teach, say, for example, that America was founded as its guiding principle was racism. Of course, this is pure nonsense, but we thought it would all work. And you can't blame us for that in a certain degree, right? I mean, that's a sort of function of success. When things are working, when the system's operating as it should, when you have good people who no longer are fighting for freedom every day, you can get a little fat on some of the ideas. You can get a little fat on that freedom, and it's time for us to trim it. I think that's exactly why you guys are here. So related to the media specifically, I think the first thing that I can tell you, without question, is the media, the mainstream media, or the corporate press, whatever phrase you want to use, the fake news, whatever it might be, they're not your friends. They are not your friends, and they will never be your friends, right? They will never give the governor a fair shake. They will never give Florida a fair shake, because freedom, the idea that the individual, which is the root of Western civilization, that you and your children and your spouses that there is something unique about you and valuable about you, that is the hardest thing for them to control, right? One person with an idea can actually change the world. But they love this Borg idea, this idea that we're just sort of this collective mess, and they can figure out how to group us in this very weird way. Black people must think this, white people must think this, gay people must think this, et cetera, and that we'll all behave accordingly. You know, it was interesting because when I was listening to the governor, he mentioned the gubernatorial debate, and I was actually at the debate, and it was really something to see this in person. I'm sure all of you watched it on television, and you noticed the screaming and the jeering and all that stuff, and it kind of sounded as if Charlie Crist had more supporters there. All 12 of them, they were there. It was incredible. But he makes a really interesting point. They basically, it was split half and half, so about 200 people, 100 on each side. And there's a reason I'm telling you this related to the media. The DeSantis crew, it was all individual people, and everyone was kind of dressed nice the way you guys are dressed, and it was an interesting set of people that were either supporters of the campaign or whatever it might be. And then the other side, they bust in all of these people, and they had their union shirts, and they wouldn't follow any of the rules, and they're screaming and all of these things. Didn't listen to any of the rules. But for those of you that you were watching it on TV, and I saw this all over Twitter after, boy, it sounds like Charlie Crist really won that debate because they're screaming the most, and then the media runs with that. Now, it had nothing to do with what reality was. It had nothing to do, obviously, with what the results of the election were or what the state of Florida felt about the governor or the other one. I shouldn't even mention his name. It's not even worth talking about him anymore. But everything will be framed against you guys, and you really need to understand that. When you go in there and you say, whether it's a school board meeting, you talk to the superintendent, you talk to whoever it might be, they are going to try to frame you as racist and bigoted and all of these things. And you must simply stand your ground. You are not. You are not. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. We've put these things to bed. That is not to say that there is no hatred. Of course, there is some hatred out there, but I just have no doubt it's not the people that are in this room. You are fighting to just bring things back to the way that they were. If you would have said to anyone, I mean, imagine saying to anyone 15, 20 years ago that in many of the schools in the United States, they will actually enshrine the idea that a teacher, a third grade teacher, regardless of male or female, should be able to talk to a third grade student, regardless of male or female, about sex or gender identity privately. Hide that from the parent. Hide that from other people at the school, potentially, and they were doing this, we know they were doing this, call that child another name of the other gender. Imagine what we all would have thought 15 years ago. You would have said this is a complete dystopian fiction. You would have said this is Black Mirror, this is a Philip K. Dick novel, right? It's complete nonsense, and yet it happened. So we have to acknowledge that it happened. And the beauty is, well, there's a reason you guys are here right now. You're here because they finally pushed too far, right? They just pushed too far. Look what happened in Virginia, which caused Glenn Youngkin to win. Look what happened right here in Florida. I mean, 20 points, 20 points. I'll tell you something funny. I did an event actually right here in Orlando. It was the last stop on my book tour with the governor was my guest, just 2 miles or so from here, on June 1st. And we're sitting in the green room, just the two of us. And we had a few minutes, and honestly, he mostly wanted to talk about baseball. I was like, oh, I'm sitting with the governor. What are we going to talk about? He wanted to talk about baseball. But finally, right before we went on stage, I said, Governor, you know, maybe I'm crazy. I'm a new Floridian. I don't know what's going on, but I honestly think you're going to win by 15 points. And he laughed in my face. He laughed in he said 7 points, 7 points, and he won by 20. So he owes me a beer or something. I don't know. But the media is not going to take too kindly to you guys. That is simple, you know. And it's interesting because there's so many things when you talk about the media. You know, this isn't the old days when it was like, okay, we had NBC Nightly News and ABC and CBS, and they were all on at 6:30, and they roughly covered the same thing. And it didn't matter who you watched, right? It didn't really matter because maybe you watched NBC because you liked Tom Brokaw, or you watched CBS or ABC because you like Peter Jennings or whatever it might be, but they basically covered the same thing. And then as a nation, we all sort of coalesced around the same ideas. Now you might say, boy, they were giving us a really narrow view of what reality was, and I think, a lot of the things that we're finding out now through Elon Musk and Twitter, who is, in my opinion, actually saving this republic right now. Make some noise for the richest man in the world. I mean, Elon Musk, this guy, he's literally sending ships to Mars right now, right? He's doing these incredible things, and he decided to get in the sort of dirtiest fight possible so that he could fight for free speech, because that's how dire the situation is. But back in the day, we had a sort of very narrow view of what was acceptable. Then social media came, and in these last 20 years, man, you can find pretty much anything online, right? And there's a beauty to that, and there's a sort of scary element to that too. And then what are we finding in it's literally in the last, say, 2 weeks, we are now finding out that the government, at some level, the federal government was doing coordination to silence you guys, right? And who is one of the biggest accounts on all of Twitter that they were silencing? I'm sure you know of the account, Libs of TikTok, right? You guys know about Libs of TikTok? Yeah. So Libs of TikTok, I mean, this is incredible because this goes right to the heart of, I think, why so many of you are involved now in your kids' education or your grandkids' education, whatever it might be. Libs of TikTok, all she did was repost, in essence, what teachers were saying about what they were doing with their students, mostly related to this gender stuff. How they actually were putting these messages into the kids' minds and confusing them with the pronouns and they, them, and he, she, and all of these things. And all Libs of TikTok did was repost it, right? She often didn't even add commentary to it. And between the government and Twitter, they started silencing her. They started censoring her, and now we have actual evidence of it. So the point of all of this is that if good people fight, and it is not that fun to fight sometimes, and I heard the ladies before me, sometimes being a happy warrior is important and not attacking the person, and look, they are going to say bad things about you. That is how it is. You're not going to believe this. They say bad things about me sometimes. They can be bad, people. The media, they're not great. But don't expect them to be great, right? And I think that's also consistent with probably what most of your values are, right? That society should flourish from the bottom up. That it shouldn't be this top-down, this giant, Betsy DeVos was here, it shouldn't be this giant Department of Education that has this one-size-fits-all design for education for every child in America, regardless of where they live or what their community's values are or what their family's values are or anything else. But they love top down. And also, what else do they love? Well, they don't, or what else do they not love? They don't love choice, right? When you talk about charter schools and private schools, more options for children to go to other schools, learn other things, put a little more pressure on the public education system to have to do a little bit better. What do? They freak out, right? They somehow try to make you think that it's racist, sexist, and all of those things. So these are the ideas that we just have to get past. And if you can get past these ideas and realize that the mainstream media is never going to come around, and be ready to fight them too. I know it might sound a little silly. You guys are like, well, wait a minute, I'm just running for my local school board, in some little town in Florida. Why is the media going to go after me? But they might. And actually, they probably will. They probably will. As Florida becomes the pinnacle of freedom in the United States. I mean, do you guys really realize that? I can truly tell you that as a new Floridian, that we live in the freest place in the world. Do you understand that? We really do, guys. The United States has all sorts of problems right now, but we are the freest country in the world, and we live in, without question, the freest state in the world. So when you guys get involved, you are defending that freedom. There's a limited amount that a governor can do. Sure, we have the best governor in the country. There's no doubt, right? We all know it, we get it, okay, great. But it's not just him. He's making the right decisions by standing up for what he believes in, which from my humble opinion, happen to be the right things, and he's picking the right fights, and he's fighting the media in the proper way. He did not choose to fight Disney. Disney chose to fight him, right? He really, that was it. That was it. And by the way, look what happened. Look what happened. First off, they passed this parents in education bill. The word gay, as you guys know, was not even in the bill. Okay, it had nothing to do with sexuality. It really didn't. It, again, was what I referred to earlier. You just don't want state educators talking to children about things that they obviously shouldn't talk about. And if you want evidence of that, everyone, for just one moment, picture your third grade teacher. Now think about talking about sex with her. Does that seem right? Mrs. Kochenauer, I thought she was 160 years old, that I was gonna talk about sex with this woman. She probably was 50 now that I think back, but like, right? But the idea that they think this is their right. They think they own your children. So he took the fight to them. And then what happened to Disney in this very town that we are in right now, right? Well, first off, the CEO stepped down a couple weeks ago. You saw that, right? This Bob Chapek guy stepped down, which was fantastic. I called it about 8 months ago. I said, this will not end well for this guy, because you could see he was a hostage at his own company, right? He was a hostage because he had let this diversity and inclusion department run rampant there, absolutely rampant. And instead of doing what Disney should do, which is focus hopefully on making good movies and TV shows and fixing Star Wars, which I'll never forgive them for, and everything else. You got it, yeah. Instead of doing that, they decided to say, no, we're going to be activists and we're going to put these messages into our shows and our movies and all of these things. And it caused him to get fired. They've now brought back Bob Iger. And if you saw it just a week or so ago, Bob Iger gave a big talk in front of all the Disney employees. And in essence, and the proof's in the pudding, so I don't want to give him too much credit yet, but in essence, he said, we have to step back from this stuff. And do you know why that is? It's because the governor and you guys fought it. That really is the truth. That really is the truth. The governor picked the fight once it came to him, as I said earlier, but then the proof was in the pudding, because then he won by a landslide. So even basically one of the biggest corporations, one of the 10 biggest corporations in the entire world that is headquartered right here where we're having this conference, they balked because good people gave enough juice for the governor to say, I will keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, despite what the media said, despite what big tech was trying to censor and the rest of it. So that really, more than anything else, is my message, that if you fight, do not worry about mainstream media. The hit pieces will keep coming. New York Times, about 4 years ago, front page of the Sunday New York Times, ran a story about the YouTubers that were leading people to the alt-right. And they included me, Ben Shapiro, yarmulke-wearing Ben Shapiro, big white nationalist. They included Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman. And guess what? We're all, well, Milton's not here anymore, but the rest of us are doing okay. The point is, you will get through it. They will say bad things about you, but I really believe it. The truth will set you free. I believe it more than anything else. And if you fight for what is right, other people will support you. His leadership right now, I'm pointing to a podium that there's nobody there, but you know I'm talking about the governor, right? The governor's leadership will be strengthened. And it's funny because the two of my favorite words, probably if we were to do a word count of what I say on the Rubin Report, words that I say on the Rubin Report every day over the year, freedom and blueprint probably are the two ones. Freedom, obviously, I'm saying left and right on every show, but blueprint's a new one that I've been saying on the show, and I've really been saying it since this last election. Florida is the blueprint for America. It really is. If this country is going to continue the way that we all know it to be, the way that it was set up to be, the way that it should be, then the blueprint of freedom, of all of the things that have been discussed at this conference, this is the stuff we have to export. It really is that simple, guys. And it's like you guys have a huge piece in that. So I've got about 5 minutes left, and they asked me to take a couple questions from the crowd. So don't be shy, just yell them out, nothing's off limits. Somebody just scream at me, we're gonna make it happen. Ma'am.
We know you're new, but those were counties of Florida, not cities.
I'm getting corrected. Okay, I didn't say I was gonna be fact-checked up here. She knows that I'm new. Those were counties of Florida, not cities in Florida. Collier County, okay, I got it. Fair enough, I appreciate that. I also know that I say Florida like a New Yorker. I'm working on it. Florida, orange juice, okay, yes. Oh, great question. So you're running for 2024 superintendent and the media is reaching out to you already. So first off, any interview you do, if it's on Zoom, record on your end. If it's in print, I mean, make sure you have a full record of what the exact question was. You know, Governor DeSantis did something really interesting. I'm sure, I recognize a few of you from this, from the Sunshine Summit a couple months ago over at the Hard Rock in Hollywood. And Governor DeSantis banned mainstream media from coming in. And then they were freaking out. But yeah, he mentioned why he did it when he gave his talk. He said, well, wait a minute, we know what they're gonna do to us. So instead, I have you guys here. And he basically was like, you guys all have phones. You'll say what we said up here. People can record it, can get it out. We don't need these people anymore. It really is that simple. You don't need them anymore. You don't need them anymore. So whatever, you know, there's a couple newspapers in Florida that obviously are pretty good and a couple that aren't. But if you get your local one that reaches out to you, and if you just know the score, you don't have to talk to them. But if you do talk to them, you make sure you have a recording of it, and then you release it, and you get it to everybody you know. And this is what they did. And eventually enough people start coming around. And I think to connect this a little bit to what I was talking about with Elon Musk and Twitter, you know, we're in a really interesting time right now where people are waking up. They're realizing, wait a minute, the media lied about Russia collusion, or the media lied about Brett Kavanaugh's a serial rapist, or all of the things or the COVID shot, or this or that or the other thing. So what else will the media lie about? So if you can really expose them on their lies, you'll get a big win, but you have to be selective when you do it. I think I got a couple minutes left. What do we got? Ma'am?
Disney, they're blaming the 50% stock loss on that increase in their pricing. So what do you think of that?
Oh, so Disney is it 50% down? Man, so Disney's blaming their 50% stock loss on increase in pricing. Yes, well, I don't know about you guys, but I canceled Disney Plus. Anyone else cancel Disney Plus? Well, I know this is a self-selected group, but that's an awful lot of people right there. So that really probably has far more to do with it. We know also they released another movie last week. What was it called? Strange World or something like that? Which absolutely bombed, and it was filled with all the woke nonsense. So the point is, you know, capitalism also, this connects also to freedom. Capitalism is the great equalizer here. If you don't like these products, stop paying for them. You know, you cancel Disney Plus, guess what? Yeah. You cancel Disney Plus, your kids will find something else to do. Or give them a rock and a stick, and they'll figure it out. Like, that really is the truth. I don't know how I'm giving you guys parental advice. I got a 4-month and a 2-month-old at home, so I can't be giving advice on that front yet. Ma'am?
Okay, so y'all have been talking about rhinos, right? Well, what if we have rhinos in our county that are recommending Republicans to run that are really Democrats? It's just split. Do you have any advice for us in our county, Florida?
That's tough. You know, one of the things, I don't love the phrase rhino because I think it becomes a little too cult-like in nature. Because, you know, I guarantee you guys, if I went around this room, and I do this at a lot of the events that I do, if I went around this room, one of the beautiful things about, let's say we're all kind of roughly on the right, whatever that means. We believe in individual rights. We're actually okay living in a country with people that think different things and behave differently and maybe have different lifestyles than us. So it's this idea that the Republican has to be this sort of perfect magnetic thing. And if we all believe that will somehow be the answer, I don't love that because I actually think it's a dangerous game, and it's actually sort of what the left's doing with pretty much everything, right? I mean, what are the progressives doing with virtually everything? You have to believe what they believe the second they believe it, right? And if you don't, then you're a racist and a bigot and everything else. However, to specifically answer your question, if you have someone that's running and they're a Republican or a conservative, but they're not quite there yet, I actually think our arguments are much better. I really do. Our arguments are much better. Why school choice is important, why giving an honest assessment of history is important, why not having a national Department of Education that's telling you how your kids in Florida have to live the same way it's telling kids in San Francisco how they have to live. So I think there's an honest way to fight it. It's a tricky one, but I think it can be a very slippery slope. Once you start, we have plenty of enemies, trust me. There's enough people that are enemies out there that if someone's like kind of ballpark where you want them to be, figure out how to bring them in. Ma'am?
We understand you're from California, so let me explain.
We understand you're from California, so let me explain. Yes, ma'am.
A rhino is
Yes.
someone who says they're like us.
Yes.
And they're lying.
They're not. If they tell us, I'm a Republican, but I believe in this,
Right.
this, and they do what they say they believe, that's okay with me. They don't have to be exactly like me. But when they say, I'm just like you, Regina, and then they go someplace and they do exact opposite,
Sure.
that's the problem.
Sure, so I totally get that. You're basically attacking Mitt Romney. I got it. Okay, I got it. I got it. Yes, I got it. She wanted to say Romney the whole time. I see it, I see it. You know what? Look, if someone, you all know this, look, if someone's acting one way privately when they're with you and telling you what they're going to do and they're doing the complete opposite in their voting habits or anything else, that's a slightly different situation than someone who may be marginally confused about the issues and that. Yeah, if that's the most common situation, then you got to fight him and you got to vote him out, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. That really is it. All right, I think we can do about 2 more. Yes, ma'am.
So I want to know how many of your friends from California have come to visit?
Yes.
How many have had hissy fits that there's just way too much freedom here, and how many are planning to move?
Man, so the question was, how many of my friends of Cali have come to visit? How many of them are pissed about our freedom? And how many of them are going to move? I can tell you this. I brought 2 companies here. I brought probably 20 people here. Everyone is employed and functional and happy, and we opened up offices in Sarasota and in Miami. I'm pretty sure everybody voted Republican, at least the ones that I'm still talking to. You know what? Well, one thing that's really nice, and it really bared out in the numbers of the election. I mean, the 20-point win. You know, the governor obviously he can talk about it a lot, and it's worth talking about. It's important. It shows. It's not just I won. It's important to talk about because it shows if you do the right thing. It's not just that you will win. You will win in a record-breaking landslide. That's really the truth. So I can tell you that out of something like 500,000, I think it's around 450,000 people in the last 2 years have left California, and it's comparable in New York. And these people that have left, one thing that has really changed, and I fully get it with all of you that are the lifelong Floridians who, as I started up top, that you have done it right. These people now move into your neighborhoods and you go, oh shit. California, I get it. I get it. And I'm not kidding. When I moved and I'm walking my dog, and then the new people, they see the new people, and I'm walking the dog, and then they kind of look at you weird for a little bit, and they go, well, where are you from? And I go, California. And there's always this kind of look like, oh, God, here we go again. And I swear to God, what I started doing, I would have it when I would walk out with my dog, I'd put my phone on with the top picture so that I could just pick up my phone and show a picture of me and the governor. And then I'd be okay. I'd be like, don't worry about me. I'm with this guy. It's all right, it's all right. But the reason I mention that is the people that are moving, because you guys have done it right, and because, really more than anything else, because COVID caused such an obvious rift in America and rift in our ideological views and all of those things, the people that fled, they're voting the right way. There's almost no exceptions of the other one. And the one sort of catch-22 to that is if you look at, say the New York election, it's interesting because Kathy Hochul, who's absolutely terrible, and Governor DeSantis campaigned with Lee Zeldin, who I think is going to be phenomenal in whatever he does. He only lost by about 5 points in New York. Now, a whole slew of New Yorkers are down here voting red and didn't vote there. So that's going to just continue the sort of separation in the states going their separate ways. But that's a different topic altogether. All right, who wants to bring us home here? Yes, ma'am.
What is your future prediction for Nancy Pelosi?
Well, she definitely is going to have marital problems going forward. Nancy, that's how we're going to end this thing. I'm going to have to take one more question after that. Nancy Pelosi, I mean, it's like, you gotta leave. Like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We should never hear from her again. She should leave. She should really be ashamed, truthfully. She should be ashamed about what happened to the Democrat Party under her leadership. All of you know there are old school Democrats that were blue dog Democrats that were decent, moderate people, JFK Democrats. Again, I'm from New York, so Daniel Patrick Moynihan and Ed Koch, Democrats. They existed. They were here in Florida as well before everything shifted. And she should really, at the end, she should really be looking back and going, boy, in my time as leader of this party, we decimated the moderate liberal and created much of what is wrong with America today. All right, final question.
Since you're here, a lot of Florida influencers are here, we have obviously a problem with the mainstream media and media in general. How can we get our messaging out, especially us in blue counties who need to talk about our new day, a new vision that we have and all the events that are going on? How can we tap into a better network of getting our message out within our counties and across the state?
Yeah, so if you didn't catch the beginning part is how, if you're in a blue county, do you get the message out? I mean, I would say, it's funny, I say this on my show all the time. It's like, if you're not on Twitter, you're probably happier. You probably are. You're not inundated with evil and madness and lunacy all day long. And I wouldn't want to tell anyone to be on there. However, it is the PR wire for the world. And you may not care about Twitter, but what happens on Twitter cares about you. It's where this stuff starts and where it spreads. So I would say basically just get your stuff out there. The young lady who's running for superintendent in 2024, it's like, put some videos on Twitter, put them on Instagram, don't put them on TikTok, which is a Chinese spy app that I know the governor is working on getting out of Florida. Yeah, I mean, the guy's just doing everything right. It really is that simple. But get on these platforms, put some videos out, say what you believe. And you know what? The first one's gonna get 3 views, the second one will get 7, but then eventually you're gonna go, boy, that one got 300, and then next thing you know, you got one in the thousands, and then you're good to go. That really, you don't need mainstream media. You do not need to sit down with Chuck Todd or Acosta or Lemon. I was trying to go through my Rolodex of those clown people. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you guys, and I wish you all luck, and God bless the free state of Florida, huh? Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.